The door to Don Silvano's private office didn't creak. It screamed. Every head in the room snapped toward the sound. 6 armed men, monsters in tailored suits with tattoos crawling up their necks like accusations, froze mid-breath. The crystal tumbler in Vincent Corleone's hand stopped halfway to his lips. The cigar between Dominic Soprano's fingers burned forgotten, ash tumbling to the Persian rug, worth more than most men's lives. And there, framed in the doorway, backlit by the amber glow of the hallway, stood a boy. 9 years old, maybe 70 pounds soaking wet, wearing a red hoodie 2 sizes too big and jeans with holes in the knees that weren't fashion statements, but poverty's signature. His dark hair stuck up in wild tufts, his face smudged with dirt, and something that might have been dried tears. But it was his hands that made the room hold its breath. Both small fists wrapped around a Glock 19, the barrel aimed with trembling precision at the heart of Don Alessandro Silvano, the most feared man in New York City, the architect of an empire built on blood and silence, the king who'd ordered executions with less emotion than most men ordered coffee. "Where is my mother?" The boy's voice cracked on the last word, high and desperate and so full of raw need that it carved through the cigar smoke and expensive cologne like a knife through flesh. Hello, everyone. Before we dive deeper into this incredible story, I want to say welcome. Whether you're watching from New York, Tokyo, or somewhere in between, I'm so glad you're here. How are you doing today? And hey, if you haven't subscribed to the channel yet, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button right now. You won't want to miss what happens next, trust me. Now, back to our story. No one moved. The boy's arms shook with the weight of the weapon, but his aim never wavered. The gun pointed directly at the Don's chest, where a heart allegedly still beat beneath the $3,000 suit and the web of scars that mapped a lifetime of violence. Don Silvano sat in his leather throne, because that's what it was, really, not a chair but a seat of power. And for the first time in 30 years, Alessandro Silvano felt something that might have been fear. Not of the gun. He'd stared down more barrels than he could count, had felt the hot kiss of bullets in his flesh, had walked through firefights like other men walked through rain. Number. He was afraid of the boy's eyes. Brown eyes, deep and dark and drowning in grief, eyes that knew loss the way most 9-year-olds knew video games and soccer practice, eyes that had seen too much, endured too much, survived too much. Eyes he recognized. "Vincent," the Don said softly, never breaking eye contact with the child. "Lower your weapon." Vincent Corleone, the Don's right hand, a man who'd killed 17 people before his 25th birthday, hesitated. "Boss?" "Now!" The command carried the weight of absolute authority. Vincent's gun dropped to his side. Around the room, the other 5 soldiers followed suit, though their trigger fingers twitched with the instinct to protect their king. The boy didn't lower his weapon. If anything, his jaw tightened, his small body going rigid with determination that bordered on suicidal courage. "I asked you a question," the boy said, and this time his voice didn't crack. This time it carried steel that had been forged in fire, too hot for childhood to survive. "Where is my mother?" Don Silvano leaned forward slowly, his tattooed hands, maps of violence, each knuckle a gravestone, resting on the mahogany desk that had witnessed 1,000 confessions and twice as many lies. "What's your name, boy?" "Answer my question first." A muscle twitched in Dominic Soprano's jaw. No one spoke to the Don like that. Not politicians, not rival bosses, not federal judges with warrants in their pockets, certainly not children with death wishes and stolen guns. But the Don's lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile, wasn't quite sadness. "You've got courage, I'll give you that. Stupid courage, but courage nonetheless." He paused, studying the boy's face with an intensity that made grown men confess to crimes they hadn't committed. "Tell me her name, your mother's name." The boy's finger trembled on the trigger. One wrong move, One nervous twitch, and this room would become a slaughterhouse. They'd kill the boy before his body hit the ground, but not before that bullet found its home in the Don's chest. "Elena," the boy whispered, and the name fell into the room like a grenade with the pin already pulled. Elena Ripley. Every man in that office had been trained to keep poker faces during federal interrogations, to smile while breaking fingers, to laugh while disposing of bodies. Every man in that office had ice in their veins and stones where their hearts should be. Every man in that office reacted. Vincent Corleone's glass shattered on the floor. Dominic Soprano's cigar fell from his lips. Salvatore McLean's hand went to the cross around his neck, a reflex from a childhood so distant it might as well have been fiction. And Don Alessandro Silvano, the man who'd built an empire on the bones of his enemies, who'd survived 3 assassination attempts and a federal task force, who'd loved exactly once in his entire blood-soaked life, and lost that love 9 years ago when she vanished without a trace, felt the air leave his lungs as if he'd been shot. "Elena," he repeated, the name tasting like confession and communion and damnation all at once. The boy's eyes. Her eyes, God help him. He could see it now, could see her in the shape of the boy's face, in the stubborn set of his jaw, in the way he stood like the world could throw everything at him, and he'd still be standing when the dust cleared, filled with tears that he refused to let fall. "She told me, if anything ever happened to her, if she ever disappeared." The boy's voice broke, but he kept talking, kept that gun pointed at the one man in New York who might actually have answers. "She told me to find Alessandro Silvano. She said you were dangerous. She said you were cruel. But she said you never lied." The Don stood slowly, and immediately every gun in the room came up again, aimed at the boy, because these men had seen their boss's tells, had learned to read the subtle shifts in his body language that preceded violence. But the Don raised one hand, a gesture that meant stand down, and the guns lowered reluctantly. He walked around the desk, each step measured, each movement careful. He stopped 5 feet from the boy, close enough to see the dirt under the child's fingernails, the bruises on his wrists that spoke of recent violence, the way his sneakers were held together with duct tape. Close enough to see that the boy had his mother's eyes but his father's. "Number." The Don's world tilted on its axis. The boy had his eyes. Not just Elena's warm brown, but the specific shade of dark amber that ringed the pupil. The exact same pattern. The same genetic fingerprint that looked back at him every morning from the mirror. "When's your birthday?" the Don asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The boy's arms were shaking so badly now that the gun wavered, but his gaze never faltered. "December 7th. I just turned 9. 9 years ago. December, which meant January, February, March. 9 months before December. March, 9 years ago. The night Elena told him she was leaving. The night she'd cried in his arms and said she couldn't live in his world anymore, couldn't watch him destroy himself, couldn't love a man who'd sold his soul so completely that there was nothing left to save. The night they'd made love one last time, desperate and tender and final, and she'd disappeared before dawn, leaving only a note that said, "I'm sorry. Please don't look for me. If you ever loved me, let me go." He'd honored that request, turned every instinct to hunt, to track, to possess into dust. Let her vanish into whatever life she'd wanted without him. And she'd been carrying his child. "What's your name?" he asked again, and this time it wasn't a command. It was a prayer. The boy's lip quivered. The gun dropped an inch. "Ethan. Ethan Ripley." "Ethan," the Don repeated, tasting his son's name for the first time, feeling something crack in the fortress he'd built around whatever remained of his humanity. "When did she disappear?" 3 weeks ago." The tears finally fell, tracking through the dirt on the boy's cheeks. "We were hiding. She wouldn't tell me from what, but we kept moving, kept using fake names. Then one night, men came. They had badges. Police badges. But she screamed when she saw them, screamed at me to run, and I ran, I hid. And when I came back..." His small body shook with sobs now, the gun drooping dangerously. "When I came back, she was gone. Blood on the floor, her phone smashed, and a note written in blood that said, 'Found you.'" The Don's hand moved faster than thought, gently taking the Glock from the boy's trembling fingers. Ethan didn't resist. Without the weapon, without the mission that had carried him through 3 weeks of hell, he was just a child again, lost and alone and breaking. Alessandro Silvano, the man who'd ordered his first execution at 17, who'd built an empire on terror and respect, who hadn't shed a tear since his mother's funeral 35 years ago, dropped to one knee and pulled his son into his arms. Ethan collapsed against him, small fists clutching at the expensive suit, sobs tearing from his throat with the violence of a dam finally breaking. The Don held him, one hand cradling the back of the boy's head, breathing in the scent of cheap shampoo and fear and family. "Vincent," the Don said quietly, his voice carrying across the stunned silence of the room. "Clear the office. Everyone out, now." "Boss, now." They left like ghosts, closing the door with a silence that spoke of understanding. They'd never seen the Don like this. They'd never imagined he could be like this. When they were alone, the Don pulled back just enough to look at his son's face. His son, God, he had a son, and wiped the tears from those familiar eyes. "Ethan," he said softly, "I need you to tell me everything, every detail. The men who took her, the badges they wore, anything your mother said before they came. Can you do that?" The boy nodded, hiccuping through the tears. Will you help me find her?" Alessandro Silvano, Don of the most powerful crime family in New York, looked at his child and made a promise that would burn his empire to ashes if that's what it took. "I'll find her," he said, "even if I have to tear this city apart brick by brick, even if I have to hunt through my own organization to do it." His jaw tightened, his eyes going cold with the promise of violence. "The people who took your mother made a mistake. They left you alive. They left you to find me." He stood, helping Ethan to his feet, and walked to the window overlooking the glittering Manhattan skyline, a city he owned in all the ways that mattered. "Your mother was right about me," he continued. "I am dangerous, I am cruel, but I've never lied, and I won't start now. Finding her won't be clean, people will die, maybe people you thought were good, maybe people who deserve better than what I'm going to do to them." He looked down at his son. "But I promise you this, I will bring her home, or I will burn down everyone responsible trying." Ethan's hand slipped into his father's, so small and trusting and brave. "Can I help?" The Don almost smiled. Almost. "You just pointed a gun at the most dangerous man in New York and lived to tell about it. You've already helped more than you know." He pulled out his phone, pressed a single contact. When Vincent answered, the Don's voice carried the weight of absolute command. "Call a meeting. All capos, all lieutenants, every made man in the family. I want them in the warehouse in 2 hours." He paused, his hand tightening on his son's. "And Vincent, tell them this isn't a request. Tell them the Don is calling in every debt, every favor, every oath of loyalty they've ever sworn." "What do I tell them it's about, boss?" The Don looked down at Ethan, dirty, exhausted, still shaking from adrenaline and fear, but standing tall despite it all. His son. His son. "Tell them," Alessandro said quietly, "that someone took something that belongs to me and that we're going to war." The warehouse smelled like old blood and older sins. It sat on the edge of Red Hook, Brooklyn, a massive concrete cathedral where the Silvano family conducted business that required space, privacy, and industrial drains. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting harsh shadows across the faces of 37 men who'd killed for the Don, bled for him, built fortunes in his name, They stood in a semicircle, these wolves in expensive suits, watching their king with the wariness of predators who sensed something had shifted in the pack dynamics. Alessandro Silvano stood on a raised platform, his presence commanding despite the exhaustion that pulled at his features. He hadn't slept in 48 hours, hadn't eaten, hadn't done anything except dig through 9 years of buried history, trying to understand how Elena had stayed hidden, why she'd stayed hidden, and who the hell had found her. Beside him, small and defiant and refusing to leave his father's side, stood Ethan. The boy had cleaned up, showered, changed into clothes that actually fit, courtesy of a bewildered shopping trip where Vincent Corleone had discovered that children's sizes made no sense, and that 9-year-olds apparently needed something called light-up sneakers. But even in fresh clothes, Ethan carried himself like a soldier, eyes alert, posture ready, one hand never far from his father's. Vincent stood to the Don's left, his usually calm expression troubled. Dominic Soprano flanked the right, arms crossed, jaw tight. These men had been with Alessandro for 15 years. They'd seen him build an empire from the ashes of the old families. They'd watched him become something more myth than man. They'd never seen him look at anyone the way he looked at that boy. "You're wondering why I called this meeting," the Don said, his voice carrying across the warehouse without effort. "You're wondering why I pulled you from your territories, your businesses, your families. Some of you are wondering if this is a purge." Nervous glances ricocheted around the room. In their world, emergency meetings sometimes ended with bodies and plastic sheeting. "It's not a purge," Alessandro continued. "It's something worse." He paused, letting the weight settle. "It's a reckoning." He gestured to Ethan, and the boy stepped forward with a courage that made several of the hardened criminals shift uncomfortably. There was something unsettling about a child in this place, like a dove wandering into a den of vipers. "This is my son," the Don said simply. The warehouse erupted in whispers, a sound like wind through a graveyard. "9 years ago, a woman I loved left me. I honored her wishes and didn't search for her. I didn't know she was pregnant." His hand rested on Ethan's shoulder, protective and possessive. 3 weeks ago, she was kidnapped. By men with police badges. Men who knew where she was hiding, who she was hiding from, and how to make her disappear. The whispers died. Now there was only the buzz of the lights and the sound of 37 men realizing they were about to be asked to do something that would redefine the family's future. "Her name," Alessandro said, each word deliberate, "is Elena Ripley, and I want to know which one of you knew she existed." The silence became suffocating. Vincent stepped forward, his voice steady. "Boss, I swear on my mother's grave I didn't know. If I had—" "I know, Vincent." The Don's expression softened fractionally. "You would have told me. That's why you're still standing here." His gaze swept across the assembled men. But someone knew. Elena didn't just hide for 9 years on luck. She had help, resources, information about when to move, where to go. That means someone in my organization was feeding her intelligence. Dominic Soprano's hand twitched toward his weapon. "You think we have a rat?" "I think," Alessandro said carefully, "that someone cared enough about Elena to keep her safe from me, and I need to know if that same someone failed to keep her safe from whoever took her." A man near the back cleared his throat. Tony McLean, a soldier who'd come up through the ranks by being smarter than he looked. "Boss, with respect, if someone was helping her hide from you, why would they tell anyone else where she was?" "That's exactly what we're going to find out." The Don pulled out a folder, thick with photographs and documents that his hackers had compiled in a fever dream of illegal surveillance. 3 weeks ago, Elena was living in a small apartment in Astoria, Queens. She worked at a clinic under the name Sarah Mitchell. Kept to herself, never made waves. Then, on October 23rd, 2 men showed up at her door. He tossed photographs onto the floor, surveillance images pulled from street cameras, enhanced and clarified. 2 men in suits, shields visible on their belts. Detective Raymond Kane and Detective Michael Draven both worked for the 114th Precinct. Both supposedly died in a car accident 2 weeks ago. The Don's smile could have cut glass. Except the bodies in that accident were burned beyond recognition, and the dental records were filed by the same medical examiner who's been on our payroll for 6 years. Vincent picked up one of the photos, studying it with the intensity of a man who'd learned to read violence in gestures and postures. Fake deaths, which means they're either in witness protection or they're working for someone who needed them dead on paper but alive in practice. Alessandro nodded. I want them found. I want every informant, every dirty cop, every federal agent we've compromised to start singing. Someone knows where these detectives went. Someone knows who they're really working for. Ethan's voice, small but clear, cut through the planning. They knew her real name. Every head turned to the boy. What? The Don asked, kneeling to his son's level. When they came to the door, they called her Elena, not Sarah. They said, Elena Ripley, you've been hard to find. Ethan's hands clenched into fists. She told me to run before she answered. She knew what was going to happen. Alessandro's jaw tightened. Did she say anything else? Anything at all? The boy's eyes went distant, remembering. She said, Tell him I'm sorry. Tell him it was never his fault. Tears threatened, but didn't fall. I didn't understand. I thought she was just scared. But she knew she wasn't coming back, didn't she? She knew they were going to take her. The Don pulled his son close, hiding his own expression in the boy's hair. When he straightened, his face had transformed into something ancient and terrible, the face of a man who'd built an empire on calculated violence and wasn't afraid to burn it all down for the right reason. Salvatore, he called out to a stocky man with scarred knuckles and sad eyes. You ran the protection rackets in Queens 4 years ago. Did you ever encounter Elena? See her? Hear about someone matching her description? Salvatore McLean stepped forward, scratching his gray-streaked beard. Boss, maybe? There was a woman at a clinic in Astoria. Never asked for protection. Never caused trouble. One of my guys tried to shake her down for the usual fees, and she... He hesitated. She told him she knew Alessandro Silvano personally, and that if he didn't leave her alone, she'd make one phone call that would end very badly for him. The warehouse went still. My guy thought she was bluffing. Came back to me asking if I knew anything about the Don having a woman in Astoria. I told him to drop it. Figured if you wanted us to know about her, you'd have said something. Salvatore's expression turned apologetic. I should have told you, but I thought, if she was yours, and you were keeping her secret, me bringing it up would be disrespectful. Alessandro absorbed this, his mind racing through implications. So she used my name as protection, which means she wasn't hiding from me. Not entirely. She was hiding from someone else while staying close enough to invoke my protection, if needed. Who would she need protection from? Vincent asked. If she had your name as a shield, most people in this city would run the other way. Someone who doesn't fear me, the Don said quietly. Or someone who has enough power that even my name isn't enough to stop them. A voice from the back of the group. Young, nervous, belonging to a newly made man named Christopher Bourne, who'd earned his place through exceptional skill with computers and databases. Boss, I might have something. When you told us to dig into those detectives, I pulled their financials. Kane and Draven were clean as far as cops go. No large deposits, no offshore accounts. But, Alessandro prompted, but 3 months before Elena was taken, they both took 2-week vacations. Same time, same destination according to their credit cards, Miami. Except their phones never pinged in Miami. They pinged in Manhattan, specifically in the financial district. The Don's eyes narrowed. Where in the financial district? Christopher pulled out his tablet, swiping through data. Multiple locations, but they kept returning to one address. 450 Park Avenue, that's... Archer Enterprises, Vincent finished, his voice tight. That's Michael Vance's building. The name hung in the air like poison. Michael Vance. Real estate mogul. Legitimate businessman with fingers in construction, development, and urban renewal. A man who'd built a fortune on gentrification and political connections. A man who'd been trying to push into Red Hook for 3 years, buying up properties, displacing families, transforming working-class neighborhoods into luxury developments. A man the Silvano family had repeatedly blocked, using their control of unions and construction permits to stall his projects. A man who had every reason to hate Alessandro Silvano. "Son of a bitch," Dominic breathed. "You think Vance took her? As leverage?" "I think," Alessandro said slowly, "that Michael Vance has been moving against us for years, and we've been treating him like a minor annoyance instead of a real threat. He's legitimate enough that we can't touch him without serious blowback, rich enough to hire professionals, connected enough to have cops on his payroll." "But why Elena?" Vincent asked. "How would he even know about her?" The Don's expression darkened. "Because someone told him. Someone in this organization who knew enough to point Vance in her direction." He scanned the faces before him. Men he'd trusted with his life, his empire, his secrets. Which brings us back to the original question. Who knew? Ethan tugged on his father's sleeve. When Alessandro looked down, the boy whispered something that made the Don's blood run cold. "She kept a box, under her bed. She said it had things from her old life, things she couldn't throw away." Ethan's voice strengthened. There were letters not mailed, just written. Like a diary, but addressed to someone. She'd write when she couldn't sleep, when she was scared. I saw his name on some of them. "Whose name?" The boy looked up at his father with those devastating familiar eyes. "Yours. She wrote you letters for 9 years, told you about me, about her life, about how much she missed you, and how much she hated herself for leaving." He paused. "And there were other letters, to someone else, someone she called her guardian angel, someone who sent her money every month, warned her when to move, kept her safe." Alessandro's mind raced. Someone close enough to know about Elena, loyal enough to protect her for 9 years, but either compromised or betrayed, leading Vance's people to her door. He looked at his assembled family, these men who'd sworn oaths, who'd killed and bled for him. One of them was the guardian angel. One of them had kept Elena safe. And one of them might have gotten her killed. "Here's what's going to happen," the Don said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute command. "We're going to find Michael Vance. We're going to find those 2 detectives, and we're going to find everyone who had a hand in taking Elena." He paused, meeting each man's eyes in turn. "But first, I need the person who's been protecting her to come forward. No judgment, no consequences. You kept her alive for 9 years, and I'm grateful. But I need to know everything. How you found her, who else knew, and what might have gone wrong." The silence stretched. 37 men. 37 potential betrayers. 37 possible saviors. Finally, a hand rose. Salvatore McLean stepped forward, his weathered face etched with guilt and grief. "It was me, boss. I've been watching over her since she left sending money, warning her when your business took you anywhere near her location. His voice cracked. "She saved my daughter's life once years ago, before you and her got together. My little girl was sick. Doctors gave up. And Elena. She was working at a free clinic. Stayed with my Maria through the night. Held her hand. Prayed with her against all odds. My daughter lived." Tears streamed down the hardened criminal's face. "When Elena came to me 9 years ago, pregnant and terrified, said she couldn't be in your world anymore but didn't know how to disappear. I owed her. I owed her everything. So I helped. Kept it secret. Made sure she stayed off the grid." Alessandro's expression was unreadable. "Did anyone else know?" "No one. I swear on my daughter's life. I handled it personally, kept it from the books, used my own money for the most part." Salvatore's shoulders sagged. "I don't know how Vance found her. I've been careful. So careful." The Don walked down from the platform, stopping in front of Salvatore. For a long moment, he simply studied the older man, this soldier who'd betrayed him by honoring a debt to the woman he loved. Then Alessandro embraced him. "Thank you," the Don whispered, barely loud enough to hear. "Thank you for keeping them safe." When he pulled back, his eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Now help me bring her home." Salvatore nodded, straightening. "Whatever you need, boss. I'll tear this city apart with my bare hands if that's what it takes." "Good." Alessandro turned back to the assembly. "Because that's exactly what we're about to do. Vincent, I want surveillance on every property Vance owns Dominic. Activate every informant in the NYPD. I want to know which cops are on Vance's payroll. Christopher, dig deeper into those detectives. Find their connections, their weaknesses, their lovers, their debts. Find anything we can use." He climbed back onto the platform, one hand resting on Ethan's shoulder. "And someone get my son a bulletproof vest, because he's not leaving my side, and where I'm going next, people tend to shoot back." "Where are we going?" Ethan asked, looking up at his father with a mixture of fear and excitement. Alessandro Silvano smiled. Not the cold smile of a crime lord, but the fierce smile of a father about to go to war for his family. "We're going to introduce ourselves to Michael Vance, and we're going to ask him, very politely, where he's keeping your mother." The warehouse erupted in activity, men pulling out phones, strapping on weapons, transforming from a meeting into a military operation. The Silvano family was going to war, and God help anyone who stood in their way. But as Alessandro watched his soldiers prepare, as he felt his son's small hand slip into his, a cold certainty settled in his chest. This wasn't going to be simple. Vance was too smart, too careful, the detectives too well hidden. And Elena had known she wasn't coming back, had sent her son to find him with a message. It was never his fault. What did she know that he didn't? What was she trying to tell him? And more importantly, was she still alive? Michael Vance's penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of 450 Park Avenue, a gleaming tower of steel and glass that pierced the Manhattan skyline like a middle finger to everyone who'd ever doubted that money could buy absolution. The lobby smelled like money and orchids. Alessandro Silvano walked through the marble entrance at precisely 9:47 p.m., Ethan at his side, flanked by Vincent and Dominic. They wore their violence like tailored suits, visible enough to promise consequences, refined enough to pass for legitimate businessmen. Almost. The concierge, a young man named Bradley, whose smile was professionally trained and whose eyes screamed, "I don't get paid enough for this," stood from his desk as they approached. "Gentlemen, I'm afraid Mr. Vance doesn't accept visitors without—" Vincent placed a briefcase on the marble counter, opened it. Inside, stacked in neat rows, sat $200,000 in cash. "He'll see us," Vincent said quietly. Bradley's Adam's apple bobbed. He looked at the money, looked at the 4 figures before him, 3 men radiating the kind of danger that survival instincts screamed to avoid, and 1 child whose presence made the whole situation surreal and terrifying. I'll call up to—" "No need." Alessandro's smile could have frozen blood. "We'll announce ourselves." They walked past the desk, past the sputtering concierge, into the private elevator that required a key card. Dominic produced said card, liberated from one of Vance's security personnel approximately 47 minutes ago, along with a comprehensive explanation of the building's security protocols, obtained through methods that would trouble Bradley's sleep for weeks. The elevator rose in silence. Ethan pressed close to his father, trying to project confidence, but unable to hide the tremor in his small frame. Alessandro squeezed his shoulder gently. "You don't have to come in," he said softly. "You can wait in the elevator. This might get complicated." Ethan shook his head stubbornly. "She's my mom. I'm not waiting anywhere." Pride and fear warred in the Don's chest. His son, his brave, foolish, perfect son. The elevator chimed. The doors opened onto a private foyer decorated with abstract art worth more than most people's houses. Beyond, through floor-to-ceiling windows, Manhattan glittered like a promise of everything money could buy. 2 security guards stood by the double doors leading to Vance's apartment. Large men, ex-military by their posture, with the kind of alertness that came from actual combat experience, rather than YouTube training videos. They saw Alessandro. Their hands moved to weapons. "I wouldn't," the Don said conversationally. "Your employer has something of mine. We're here to discuss terms of return. You can either let us in peacefully, or my associates can explain the situation in a language that involves broken bones and regret your choice." The guards exchanged glances. One of them spoke into a radio. A pause. Then, surprisingly, they stepped aside. The doors opened. Michael Vance stood in the center of his living room, a space so aggressively modern it looked like a magazine spread titled "Wealthy Sociopath's Lair." Everything was white and chrome and angles. Art that probably meant something to people with too much money and too little soul. A view that showcased the entire city like a possession. Vance himself was tall, lean, probably 50, but looked 40 thanks to expensive procedures and personal trainers. Salt and pepper hair styled perfectly, suit that cost more than a car, smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Don Silvano," he said, spreading his hands as if greeting an old friend. "This is unexpected, and illegal, I should mention. Breaking into a private residence." "Where is she?" Alessandro didn't move from the doorway, didn't pretend this was a social call. "Where is Elena Ripley?" Vance's smile didn't falter, but something flickered in his eyes. "I'm afraid I don't know anyone by that." The sound of a gun cocking cut him off. Ethan had produced a weapon, a small .22 that Salvatore had given him earlier, against everyone's better judgment, and aimed it with both hands at Vance's chest. "My mom," the boy said, his voice shaking but his aim steady. "Where is my mom?" For the first time, Vance's composure cracked. He stared at the child, then at Alessandro, his mind visibly racing through calculations and implications. "Your son?" He let out a breath that might have been a laugh. "My God, she didn't tell me she had a child. That changes—" He caught himself, but it was too late. "So you do know her," Alessandro said softly, stepping into the apartment. Vincent and Dominic fanned out, professional and lethal. "And you just admitted to knowing details about her that you shouldn't, which means you're involved. Which means you have approximately 30 seconds to tell me where she is before this turns into the kind of evening that ends with you learning why people fear me." Vance raised his hands slowly, his businessman's mask sliding back into place. "I think there's been a misunderstanding. Perhaps we should all sit down, discuss this like civilized—" "Where is my mother?" Ethan's voice cracked into a scream, tears streaming down his face, the gun wavering dangerously. Alessandro moved fast, gently lowering his son's weapon while keeping his own gaze locked on Vance. "Ethan, breathe. We'll find her. I promise." Vance watched this interaction with something that might have been calculation or might have been genuine concern. "Listen, I can see you care about the boy, I can respect that. So I'm going to be honest with you, which is more than most people in our respective positions would do." He moved to a bar cart, poured himself a scotch with steady hands. "Elena Ripley came to me 6 months ago. She said she had information about your organization, names, locations, financial records. She said she'd give it all to me if I helped her disappear." Really disappear. New identity, new life, overseas. Alessandro's blood turned to ice. "You're lying." "Am I?" Vance took a sip, met the Don's eyes with something like pity. "She said she was tired of running, tired of looking over her shoulder, said the only way to truly escape you was to give someone else the means to destroy you, that if you were in prison or dead, she'd finally be free." "Liar!" Ethan lurched forward, but Alessandro held him back. "She wouldn't," the Don said quietly, but doubt crept into his voice. "Elena wouldn't betray me. Wouldn't she?" Vance circled slowly, predatory now that he sensed weakness. A woman trapped for 9 years, living in fear, raising a child alone while the father built an empire on blood? You really think she was writing you love letters? She was documenting everything, insurance, leverage, and when she had enough, he snapped his fingers. She came to me. Vincent shifted, ready to act, but Alessandro raised a hand. If that's true, if she really came to you, then why did you need to kidnap her? Why send detectives? Why the violence? Vance's expression flickered. Gotcha, Alessandro thought. Because, Vance said carefully, she got cold feet, decided she couldn't go through with it, tried to back out of our arrangement. He shrugged. I'd already paid her, already made promises based on the information she'd provide. I needed to renegotiate our terms. By sending dirty cops to grab her in the middle of the night. Alessandro's voice dropped to a whisper that somehow filled the entire room. By leaving blood on her floor and a 9-year-old child to witness it. That's your idea of renegotiation? Business is business, Vance said, and she made a deal with... He never finished the sentence. Alessandro moved with the speed of a man who'd been killing since he was 17. 3 steps, 1 fluid motion. His hand closed around Vance's throat, lifting him off the ground, slamming him against the floor-to-ceiling window hard enough to crack the glass. I'm going to ask you one more time, the Don said, his face inches from Vance's, his grip tightening. And if you lie, I'm going to throw you through this window and watch you fall 73 floors. Where is Elena? Vance gasped, his face turning red, his hands clawing uselessly at Alessandro's iron grip. Can't breathe. The Don loosened his hold fractionally. Talk. Storage facility, Vance choked out. Brooklyn, Red Hook, Unit 247. But you're too late. Alessandro's blood froze. What do you mean, too late? Vance's smile returned, vicious and triumphant despite his compromised position. She's already dead. Has been for 2 weeks. I had her killed the day after we took her. You want to know why? He laughed, the sound wet and terrible. Because she didn't come to me to betray you. She came to warn me. Told me she knew I was planning something against you. Threatened to expose my operation if I didn't leave her alone. The world tilted. She loved you, Vance continued, spite dripping from every word. Even after 9 years, even after everything, she was protecting you. So I eliminated the threat, had my people dispose of the body in that storage unit, and then I waited to see how long it would take for you to figure it out. Alessandro's vision went red. His grip tightened. The window cracked further. 1 push, 1 flex of his hands. He could end this man. Watch him fall. Watch him break on the pavement below. Dad. Ethan's voice. Small, broken, terrified. Dad, is Mom really? The Don looked at his son. Saw the devastation. Saw the hope dying in those familiar eyes. Saw a child who'd fought so hard, been so brave, holding on to the belief that his mother could be saved. And Alessandro realized Vance wanted this, wanted him to kill in front of the boy, wanted to break something pure in Ethan by making him watch his father become a monster. He released Vance, who crumpled to the floor, gasping. Vincent, Alessandro said quietly, call Salvatore, tell him to take a team to Red Hook, storage facility, Unit 247. His voice cracked almost imperceptibly. Tell them to bring appropriate equipment. Vincent pulled out his phone, stepping away to make the call. The Don knelt beside Ethan, who was shaking silently, tears streaming down his face. I'm sorry, Alessandro whispered. I'm so sorry. But Ethan wasn't looking at his father. He was staring at something across the room. A door, partially open, leading to what looked like a study. And in that study, visible through the crack, was something that made the boy's eyes widen. A woman's scarf. Silk. Emerald green. The exact scarf Elena had been wearing in the photograph Ethan had shown his father. "That's hers," Ethan breathed. "That's my mom's scarf." Alessandro's head snapped up. He looked at Vance, who'd gone very still, his expression transforming from triumph to something like fear. "She's alive," the Don said slowly. "You wouldn't keep a scarf from a corpse. You'd burn it, dispose of it, destroy the evidence." He stood, pulling his own weapon now, aiming it at Vance's head. "She's alive, and you have her." "Where?" "You have no proof. I have 37 soldiers who will tear this building apart. I have connections in every police precinct who will look the other way. I have judges who owe me favors and federal agents who cash my checks." Alessandro's finger tightened on the trigger. "But more than that, I have nothing left to lose. You've already killed her in my mind. You've already broken my son's heart. So now you get to choose. Tell me where she really is, or I'll spend the next decade making you wish you'd never heard the name Elena Ripley. Drop a comment right now. Do you think Elena is really alive? And what would you do if you were in the Don's position? This story is about to explode, and I want to hear your predictions." Vance's face crumbled. The businessman, the mogul, the man who'd built empires, reduced to a terrified animal who'd overplayed his hand. "Warehouse," he gasped. "Hunt's Point. But you'll never—" The window behind him exploded. Glass and sound and chaos erupted as dark figures rappelled down from the roof. 6 men in tactical gear, weapons raised, moving with military precision. "NYPD! Everyone on the ground!" But these weren't cops. Alessandro could tell immediately. The gear was too new, too expensive, the tactics too refined, and the patches on their vests, blank where department insignias should be, private contractors. Vance's backup plan. Vincent and Dominic moved instantly, returning fire, pulling Alessandro and Ethan behind cover as the living room transformed into a war zone. Bullets tore through modern art and expensive furniture. Glass shattered. Someone screamed. One of Vance's security guards hit in the crossfire. Alessandro shielded Ethan with his body, pulling the boy toward the elevator. "Go, Vincent, get him out!" "Not without you, boss." "That's an order." Alessandro fired twice, dropping one of the contractors. "Ethan needs to survive this. Move!" Vincent grabbed the boy, who fought and screamed, trying to reach his father. "Dad, Dad!" "I'll find her!" Alessandro shouted over the gunfire. "I promise! I'll bring her home!" The elevator doors closed on Ethan's devastated face, Vincent holding him back, protecting him even as the boy's screams echoed down the shaft. Dominic appeared at Alessandro's side, reloading with practiced efficiency. "So, what's the plan, boss?" The Don looked at Vance, who'd used the chaos to crawl toward a panic room hidden behind a bookshelf. Looked at the contractors, professional and deadly. Looked at the shattered window, 73 floors up, Manhattan glittering below. "We survive," he said. "We find Elena, and then we burn this entire empire down." He charged forward into the fire, Dominic at his side, their weapons singing the song of violence and vengeance. The war for Elena Ripley had truly begun. And God help anyone caught in the crossfire. The firefight lasted 93 seconds. Alessandro Silvano had survived 3 decades in organized crime by understanding one fundamental truth. Overwhelming force was temporary, but calculated brutality was eternal. He'd counted 6 contractors. Dominic had dropped 2 before they'd made it halfway across the penthouse. The Don himself had eliminated one with a shot that shattered an elbow and sent the man screaming to the floor, that left 3 professionals against 2 men who'd built their reputations on being unkillable. Vincent's voice crackled through the Don's earpiece. "Boss, I've got Ethan in the car. We're clear. What's your status?" "Complicated," Alessandro grunted, rolling behind a marble pillar as bullets chewed chunks from its surface. "Vance is trying to reach his panic room. Can't let that happen." "On it." Vincent's response was immediate. "Salvatore's team is heading to Hunt's Point. I'm sending backup to your location." "No." The Don's voice carried absolute command even as he blind-fired around the pillar, buying seconds. Everyone goes to Hunt's Point. Find Elena. That's the only thing that matters. Boss! That's an order, Vincent. If I die here, you find her. You bring her home to Ethan. Understood? A pause that lasted forever. Understood. Don't die, boss. The line went dead. Dominic had worked his way along the far wall, using the chaos and smoke to get within striking distance of two contractors who'd taken position behind an overturned couch. Don watched his lieutenant move, a predator in expensive shoes, every motion economical and lethal. One contractor never saw him coming. Dominic's knife found the gap between body armor and throat with surgical precision. The second turned, but too slow. Dominic's gun came up, point blank, and the fight became 5 against 2, then 4 against 2 in the span of a heartbeat. But Michael Vance had reached the bookshelf. His hand slapped against a hidden panel. The shelf began to slide open, revealing a steel door beyond. Alessandro made a decision that would either save or damn him. He ran. Not toward cover. Not toward Dominic. Directly across the open space, through the line of fire, moving like a man possessed. Bullets traced hot lines past his head. One caught his shoulder, a burning kiss that spun him partially around but didn't stop his momentum. He hit Vance like a linebacker, driving the real estate mogul away from the panic room, both of them crashing through a glass coffee table worth more than a small car. They rolled across shattered glass and designer magazines, struggling for dominance. Vance was younger, probably stronger. But Alessandro Silvano had been killing since before Vance learned to balance a spreadsheet. The Don's elbow found Vance's solar plexus. His knee found Vance's groin. And when Vance's head snapped back from the impact, Alessandro's hands found his throat again. "The warehouse," he hissed, blood from his shoulder wound dripping onto Vance's perfect suit. "Give me the exact address, security codes, everything." Vance's face purpled, his hands scrabbled at Alessandro's grip, finding no purchase, no mercy. His eyes bulged with the primal terror of a man who'd never truly faced death before. "Can't breathe. Good." Alessandro squeezed harder. "That's the point. Talk or die. Choose now." Behind them, Dominic had eliminated another contractor. The remaining 2 were retreating toward the elevator, realizing this job had gone sideways, and their employer was about to die on his own living room floor. 890? Oak Street, Vance gasped. "Code 7734. Second floor. She's—" His eyes rolled back. Alessandro released him just before unconsciousness became death, letting the man gasp and heave on the floor. The Don stood, pressing a hand to his bleeding shoulder, and pulled out his phone. "Vincent, 890 Oak Street, Hunts Point. Second floor. Entry code is 7734. Tell Salvatore to expect security, probably armed. And tell him—" He paused, looking down at Vance's pathetic form. "Tell him Elena might not be alone. Vance had 3 weeks to do God knows what to her. Medical team on standby." "Already done, boss. Team's 15 minutes out. What about you?" Alessandro looked around the destroyed penthouse, looked at Dominic, who'd taken a round to his vest but was still standing, checking the fallen contractors for any signs of life. Looked at the shattered windows and the million-dollar view of a city that suddenly felt very small. "I'm coming to Hunts Point. Get Ethan somewhere safe. Use the apartment in Chelsea, the one nobody knows about. Post guards. Nobody in or out except family. He's not going to like being separated from you." "He doesn't have to like it. He has to survive." The Don's voice softened almost imperceptibly. Tell him his father is going to bring his mother home. Tell him to be brave a little longer." He ended the call and turned to Dominic, who was wrapping a makeshift bandage around his own ribs. "Can you walk?" "Can you?" Dominic gestured to Alessandro's shoulder, where blood had soaked through the jacket. "I've had worse." The Don retrieved his weapon, checked the magazine. "We're taking Vance's private elevator to the garage. His car will get us to Hunts Point faster than waiting for our people." "What about him?" Dominic nodded toward Vance, who'd managed to sit up, one hand clutching his bruised throat. Alessandro walked over, crouched down so they were eye level. "You're going to live, Michael, for now. Because I want you to watch what happens when someone threatens my family. I want you to see your empire collapse, your associates arrested, your properties seized, your name destroyed." He stood, delivering a kick to Vance's ribs that echoed with the crack of something breaking. "And when I'm done, when you have nothing left, I'm going to visit you one last time. We're going to have a very long conversation about consequences." Vance spat blood, his eyes burning with impotent rage. "You think you can destroy me? I have lawyers, connections. I have 37 men who've killed for me. I have judges and senators in my pocket. I have dirt on every major player in this city." Alessandro's smile was empty of everything except promise. "And most importantly, I have nothing left to lose. You made sure of that when you took her." He and Dominic left Vance bleeding on his ruined floor, surrounded by the corpses of his hired protection, the city lights streaming through shattered windows like judgment. The drive to Hunts Point took 17 minutes through late-night Manhattan traffic. Alessandro spent those minutes on the phone, marshaling resources, calling in favors, preparing for what might be the most important operation of his life. Every soldier in the Silvano family was mobilized, every connection activated, every debt collected. But in the quiet moments between calls, his mind returned to Elena. 9 years. 9 years she'd lived in hiding, raising his son, writing letters she'd never send. 9 years of looking over her shoulder, moving when she sensed danger, using his name as a shield while keeping Ethan from the truth of what his father really was. And he'd never known, never suspected. Had honored her request for distance, had buried his love for her beneath layers of violence and empire building, had convinced himself that letting her go was the greatest act of love he could offer. She'd saved him once, Elena. 11 years ago, when he was drowning in the darkness of what he'd become, when every execution had started to blur together, when he'd looked in the mirror and seen a monster staring back. She'd been a nurse at a clinic where he'd gone to have stitches removed. Cash payment, no questions asked. She'd looked at the scar, then at his face, and said, "You know there's still time to stop becoming whatever you're afraid you already are." He'd fallen in love with her in that moment, with her courage to speak truth to a man who could have killed her for the presumption, with her eyes that saw past the violence to something worth saving. They'd dated for 8 months, secret, careful, kept separate from his world. She'd known what he was, but believed he could be more. Had pushed him to think about legacy beyond fear, about power beyond violence. And then she'd left. Said she couldn't watch him destroy himself anymore. Said she loved him too much to be complicit in his choices. He'd let her go because he loved her enough to want her free from the blood on his hands. But she'd been carrying his child, their son. And for 9 years, she'd been alone. The guilt was a living thing, gnawing at his chest worse than the bullet wound in his shoulder. "Boss?" Dominic's voice pulled him from his thoughts. "We're here." 890 Oak Street was an old warehouse in an industrial section of Hunts Point that time, and investment had forgotten. Surrounded by chain-link fence, security cameras mounted at intervals, a single entrance with a keypad lock. 6 SUVs were already parked outside. Salvatore stood with 20 armed men, faces grim, weapons ready. When Alessandro emerged from Vance's stolen Mercedes, they straightened with military precision. "Boss," Salvatore's voice was rough with emotion. "We haven't breached yet. Wanted to wait for you." Alessandro nodded, grateful for the loyalty, for the understanding that this was personal in ways that transcended business. "Cameras?" "Christopher disabled them remotely. Building's empty except for the second floor. Thermal imaging shows 3 heat signatures, one significantly smaller than the others." 3 people, Elena and 2 guards, most likely. Or... The Don pushed the thought away. She was alive. She had to be alive. "Rules of engagement," he said, his voice carrying across the assembled soldiers. "The guards are expendable, but I want at least one alive for questioning anyone who's hurt Elena answers to me personally. And for God's sake, be careful. She might be injured, traumatized. We breach hard, but we extract soft, understood?" A chorus of acknowledgement. Alessandro punched in the code Vance had given him. The door clicked open. They moved as one, a wave of controlled violence flowing into the darkness. The warehouse interior was cavernous. Empty pallets, old machinery, dust thick enough to choke on. Emergency lights provided dim illumination, casting everything in sickly yellow. Stairs to the 2nd floor. Metal, rust-spotted, each step protesting their weight with groans that echoed like warnings. At the top, a hallway. 3 doors. The middle one had been reinforced with additional locks, the kind designed to keep someone in rather than keep others out. Alessandro's heart hammered against his ribs. 30 years of violence, and this was the most terrified he'd ever been. Not for himself, for what he might find behind that door. Salvatore placed the breaching charge, stepped back, looked at the Don for confirmation. Alessandro nodded. The explosion was controlled but deafening. The reinforced door buckled inward, smoke billowing into the hallway. His men poured through the opening, weapons raised, voices shouting commands. "Clear left! Clear right! 2 guards down, non-lethal." "Boss, you need to see this." Alessandro pushed through his soldiers into a room that had been converted into a cell. Bed bolted to the floor, bucket in the corner. Single window painted black, the smell of fear and desperation thick enough to taste. And there, pressed against the far wall, hands chained to a radiator, eyes wide with terror and hope and disbelief. Elena. She looked like a ghost of the woman he remembered. Thinner, her face gaunt, her hair matted and unkempt. Bruises on her arms, a split lip that had healed poorly. 3 weeks of captivity had carved hollows under her cheekbones, had dimmed the light in her eyes. But it was her. God, it was her. "Alessandro?" Her voice cracked, disbelief warring with desperate hope. "Is this... Are you real?" He crossed the room in 3 strides, falling to his knees beside her, his hands, these hands that had killed so many, shaking as they cupped her face. "I'm real. I'm here. You're safe now." Tears streamed down her face, cutting tracks through the dirt. "Ethan. Where's Ethan? Is he... He's alive. He's safe." Alessandro's own tears fell freely now, mixing with hers. "He came to find me, Elena. Our son walked into my office 3 days ago, pointed a gun at my chest, and demanded to know where his mother was." A sob tore from her throat, relief and anguish and pride all tangled together. "He wasn't supposed to. I told him to run, to find someone else." He found exactly who he needed to find. The Don gestured to Salvatore, who moved forward with bolt cutters, carefully breaking the chains that bound her. "We're going to get you out of here. Medical team is standing by. You're going to be okay." As the chains fell away, Elena launched herself into his arms with a strength that belied her weakened state. She buried her face in his neck, breathing him in, holding him like he might disappear. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry I left. I'm sorry I kept him from you. I thought if you didn't know, you couldn't be hurt by us, couldn't be used against us. I was trying to protect you both." Alessandro held her tighter, careful of her injuries but unwilling to let go. "You have nothing to apologize for. Nothing. You kept our son safe for 9 years. You raised him to be brave and strong and good. You did everything right." "They said..." Her voice hitched. "They said they'd kill him if I didn't tell them everything. About you, about your organization. They had photos of him, knew where he went to school, what time he walked home." Fresh sobs shook her frame. I told them nothing. I swear, Alessandro, I told them nothing. I know. I believe you. He pulled back just enough to look at her face, to trace the lines of suffering etched there. Did they? Elena? Did Vance or his people? She understood the question he couldn't finish. No. They kept me locked up. Tried to scare me, starve me, break me, but they didn't. She took a shuddering breath. I think they were waiting for Vance to decide what to do with me. He visited twice, wanted me to beg, to plead for Ethan's life. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. Pride and rage warred in Alessandro's chest. Pride at her strength, rage at the suffering she'd endured. He's going to pay for this. Everyone involved is going to pay. I don't care about revenge. Elena's hands clutched his jacket. I just want to see my son. Please, Alessandro, I need to see Ethan. You will, right now. He stood carefully, lifting her with him. Her legs buckled, 3 weeks of chains and poor nutrition, but he swept her into his arms, cradling her against his chest. Let's go home. They moved as a unit back through the warehouse, Alessandro carrying Elena, his soldiers forming a protective wall around them. Salvatore had the 2 guards, young men, hired muscle who'd folded the moment they realized they were outgunned, zip-tied, and ready for transport. Outside, the night air hit like a blessing. Elena breathed deeply, her face tilting toward the sky, as if seeing stars for the first time. Where are we going? She asked. Chelsea, safe house. Ethan's there, waiting. Alessandro helped her into the back of an SUV, sliding in beside her, maintaining contact as if afraid she'd vanish. There's a doctor standing by. He's going to check you over, make sure. I'm fine. I just need my son. Her eyes, despite everything, still carried that fierce determination he'd fallen in love with. And then we need to talk about what happens next. About what this means for Ethan, for us, for... Later. He squeezed her hand gently. First, you rest. You eat. You see our son. Everything else can wait. The drive to Chelsea took 30 minutes through streets that seemed quieter than they should be, as if the city itself was holding its breath. Elena dozed fitfully against Alessandro's shoulder, jerking awake every few minutes with barely suppressed panic, relaxing only when she saw his face, remembered she was safe. The safe house was a converted brownstone on a tree-lined street, one of a dozen properties the family owned under shell corporations. Known only to the most trusted members of the organization, Vincent met them at the door, his usually stoic expression breaking into genuine relief when he saw Elena alive and conscious. She okay, boss? She will be. Alessandro carried her inside, past guards positioned at strategic points, upstairs to a second-floor apartment that had been furnished with comfort rather than opulence. Where's Ethan? Living room. Salvatore's with him. Vincent's expression softened. Kid's been pacing like a caged tiger. Wouldn't eat, wouldn't rest. Just kept asking when you were bringing her home. They entered the living room, and time seemed to stop. Ethan sat on a couch, Salvatore beside him, the older man's hand on the boy's shoulder in a gesture of comfort and restraint. The moment Ethan saw his mother, he froze, disbelief, hope, and joy crashing across his young face in waves. Mom? Elena's composure, which had held through captivity and rescue, shattered completely. Baby, oh my baby. Alessandro set her down carefully, and Ethan flew across the room, crashing into her arms with enough force to nearly knock them both over. They sank to the floor together, mother and son, holding each other and crying with the kind of raw emotion that made everyone else in the room turn away, giving them privacy in the only way that mattered. I found him, Ethan sobbed into her shoulder. Like you said, I found Dad and I told him and he came for you. We came for you. I know, sweetheart. I know. Elena covered his face with kisses, her hands running over him as if confirming he was real and whole. You were so brave, so impossibly brave. I'm so proud of you. I thought... They said you were dead. That man, Vance, he said... The boy couldn't finish, his small body shaking with the trauma of the past 3 days. I'm here. I'm alive. She pulled back, cupping his face with both hands. And I'm never leaving you again. Never. I promise. Alessandro watched them from across the room. This family he'd never known he had. This piece of his life that had existed in shadow and secret. The weight of missed years pressed against his chest. First steps, first words, 9 birthdays, 9 Christmases. A lifetime of moments stolen by circumstance and fear. But they were here now. Safe. Together. Elena looked up, meeting his eyes across the space. And in that gaze was a question that neither of them had asked yet, because asking meant facing an answer they might not be ready for. What happens now? Before anyone could speak, Christopher Bourne burst through the door, his face pale, his tablet clutched in shaking hands. Boss, we have a problem. Alessandro's hand moved to his weapon instinctively. What kind of problem? The guards we captured. I've been interrogating them remotely, checking their stories. Christopher's fingers flew across his screen. They're telling the truth about working for Vance. But boss, they say Vance was working for someone else, someone who paid him to take Elena, someone who knew about her connection to you. The room went cold. Who? The Don's voice could have cut steel. Christopher swallowed hard. They don't know the name, but they described him. Mid-50s, Italian, scar across his left palm from an old knife wound, speaks with a Sicilian accent, and he paid Vance $2 million for information on Elena's location and custody of her for undisclosed purposes. Alessandro's blood turned to ice. He knew that description, knew it intimately, because he'd given the man that scar 20 years ago during a dispute over territory that had nearly triggered a war between families. Luca Moretti, he breathed. The name fell into the room like a grenade. Luca Moretti, Don of the Moretti family. The one rival Alessandro had never fully defeated, had instead negotiated an uneasy truce with years ago. A man who'd sworn blood vengeance after losing his son in one of the territorial wars. A man who'd disappeared from New York 3 years ago, supposedly retired to Sicily. A man who'd apparently been planning revenge all along. He's coming for us, Salvatore said quietly. This whole thing, Vance, the kidnapping, leaving the boy alive to find you. It's all been a setup. He wants you vulnerable. Wants you focused on Elena and the kid so you don't see the real attack coming. Alessandro looked at Elena, who'd gone pale, clutching Ethan tighter. Looked at his son, this brave boy who'd already survived too much. Looked at his assembled soldiers, loyal but finite, strong but not invincible. And realized that saving Elena was only the beginning. The real war was just starting. The safe house felt smaller with every passing second. Alessandro stood at the window, watching the street below for threats that could materialize at any moment. Behind him, Elena sat with Ethan curled against her side. The boy finally asleep after the emotional reunion. Vincent and Dominic flanked the door, weapons ready. Christopher hunched over his laptop, fingers flying across keys as he dug deeper into Luca Moretti's digital footprint. Boss? Christopher's voice cut through the tension. You need to see this. Alessandro crossed the room, looking over the young man's shoulder at grainy surveillance footage. A restaurant in Little Italy. Date stamp, 3 weeks ago. 2 men at a corner table. Michael Vance and Luca Moretti. There's more, Christopher said, pulling up bank records. Vance received $2 million from a shell corporation in Sicily, same day as this meeting. But here's what's interesting. He sent half of it to another account, an NYPD pension fund. Alessandro's jaw tightened. The detectives. Kane and Draven weren't working for Vance. They were working for Moretti. Vance was just the middleman. Christopher pulled up more files. And boss, Moretti's been in New York for 6 months, not Sicily. He's been hiding in plain sight. Elena's voice, hoarse but steady, came from across the room. He visited me. Every head turned. She carefully extracted herself from Ethan's embrace, standing on shaking legs. 2 days ago, The guards brought an older man, Italian accent. He asked me questions about Alessandro, where you kept your records, who you trusted most, where Ethan and I would go if we escaped. Alessandro's blood ran cold. What did you tell him? That I'd die before betraying you. Her eyes met his, fierce despite her exhaustion. He laughed, said I didn't need to betray you, said you'd do it yourself by coming for me, that this whole thing was designed to make you vulnerable, to pull your resources away from protecting your real assets. Vincent swore under his breath. It's a diversion. While we've been focused on finding Elena, Moretti's been positioning his people to strike at our operations. Not just operations. Alessandro's mind raced through implications, connections, vulnerabilities. He's going for everything. The ports, the unions, the legitimate businesses. He's going to dismantle the empire while I'm distracted by... He stopped, looking at Elena and Ethan. Almost said, while I'm distracted by them, but caught himself. Because they weren't distractions. They were his life. And Moretti knew it. There's something else, Elena said softly. He told me he knew about Ethan. Had known for years. Said he'd been watching us, waiting for the right moment. She wrapped her arms around herself. Alessandro, he said I reminded him of his daughter-in-law, the one who died in the crossfire when you and his family went to war. The room went silent. 20 years ago. The Moretti War. Alessandro had ordered a hit on Luca's son, Antonio, believing him responsible for killing 3 of his soldiers. The ambush had gone sideways. Antonio's pregnant wife had been in the car. She'd died. The baby had died. It had nearly destroyed both families before they'd negotiated peace. He's not after your empire, Elena whispered. He's after your family. He wants you to feel what he felt. Wants you to lose everything you love. Drop a comment if you're feeling this twist, and hit subscribe because what happens next is going to leave you speechless. Alessandro's phone buzzed. A text from Salvatore. Warehouse on fire. Our main cash storage. Estimated loss, 15 million. Another buzz. Different soldier. Union boss found dead. Looks like suicide, but it's not. Another. Feds just raided the port operation. Someone tipped them off. His empire was burning while he stood in this room. He wants me to choose, Alessandro said quietly, between saving my family and saving my life's work, between being a father and being a Don. Elena crossed to him, placing a hand on his chest. Then don't choose. Fight smarter. He looked down at her. This woman who'd loved him despite his darkness, who'd raised his son to be brave, who'd survived captivity without breaking. What do you mean? Moretti thinks he knows you, thinks you'll either abandon us to save your empire or abandon your empire to save us. Both options leave you destroyed. Her eyes blazed with the intelligence he'd always loved. So do neither. Make him think you're doing one thing while actually doing another. Vincent stepped forward. She's right. We stage a retreat. Make it look like you're pulling resources to protect Elena and Ethan. Let Moretti think he's winning, meanwhile. Meanwhile, we hit back where he doesn't expect it. Alessandro's mind clicked into strategic mode. Christopher, I need everything on Moretti's current operations, every business, every property, every person he cares about. On it, boss. Dominic nodded slowly. We make him choose too. See how he likes it. Elena squeezed Alessandro's hand. There's one more thing. Moretti said he'd be at a charity gala tomorrow night. Some fundraiser for children's hospitals at the plaza. He specifically mentioned it, like he wanted me to tell you, like he's inviting you to face him. It's a trap, Vincent said immediately. Of course it's a trap. Alessandro's smile was cold. But it's also an opportunity. He'll have security, but so will every other wealthy criminal in New York public place. High visibility. He can't make a move without exposing himself. Ethan stirred on the couch, sitting up, rubbing his eyes. Are we safe now? Elena went to him, kneeling down. We're getting there, baby. The boy looked at his father, then at the assembled soldiers. "What do we do?" Alessandro crossed the room, crouching beside his son. For the first time, he allowed himself to truly see the boy, not just as Elena's child, but as his child, the son he'd never known he wanted, never believed he deserved. "We fight," he said simply. "But we fight smart. And we fight together." He looked at Elena. "All of us." She nodded, understanding in her eyes. "What do you need me to do?" "Tomorrow night, you and Ethan stay here. Vincent will coordinate 6 teams. 3 hit Moretti's operations, 3 protect you. I'll go to the gala with Dominic and Salvatore draw Moretti out. End this." "You're walking into his trap," Elena said. "Yes, but he's walking into mine, too." Alessandro stood, helping her up. "Moretti made one critical mistake. He gave me something to fight for beyond power and empire. He reminded me what actually matters." He looked around at his soldiers, these men who'd killed for him, who'd die for him. "Tomorrow night, the Silvano family shows Luca Moretti why we've survived for 30 years. We show him that threatening our family was the last mistake he'll ever make." Vincent raised his weapon. "For the family." Dominic echoed, "For the family." One by one, every soldier in the room repeated the oath. And in that moment, Alessandro Silvano stopped being just a crime lord protecting his empire. He became a father protecting his son, a man protecting the woman he loved. And God help anyone who stood in his way. The Plaza Hotel glittered like a jewel box full of predators. Alessandro Silvano adjusted his tuxedo, feeling the weight of the shoulder holster beneath the tailored jacket. Beside him, Dominic and Salvatore moved through the crowd of Manhattan's elite. Criminals in evening wear, corrupt politicians glad-handing donors, businessmen whose fortunes were built on exploitation wrapped in charity. The gala's theme was hope for children. The irony wasn't lost on him. Somewhere in this room, Luca Moretti waited. Alessandro's earpiece crackled. "Boss, Teams 1 and 2 are in position at Moretti's warehouses in Jersey. Team 3 is ready to hit his money laundering operation in Chinatown." "Stand by," Alessandro murmured, scanning faces. "Wait for my signal." Then he saw him. Luca Moretti stood near the champagne fountain, silver-haired and distinguished in an Italian suit that cost more than most cars. He looked every inch the respectable businessman, chatting with a city councilman, smiling like he hadn't orchestrated Elena's kidnapping. Their eyes met across the ballroom. Moretti raised his glass in mock salute. Alessandro started forward, but Dominic's hand on his arm stopped him. "Careful, boss. Too many witnesses." That's exactly why he chose this place. Alessandro's jaw tightened. He knows I can't touch him here. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Enjoying the party?" LM. Another buzz. "Check the news." Alessandro pulled out his phone, opened a news app, and felt his world tilt. Breaking. Federal raids target Silvano crime family. Multiple arrests in massive organized crime sweep. The article detailed simultaneous raids across the city. His legitimate businesses, restaurants, construction companies, waste management. All being torn apart by federal agents, photographs showed his people in handcuffs, his offices ransacked. Another text. "Your empire is burning." But that's not the worst part. Alessandro's blood turned to ice. "Vincent, status on the safe house." Static. "Vincent, respond." Nothing. "Christopher, what's happening at Chelsea?" More static. Then a burst of gunfire through the connection, cut off abruptly. "No!" Alessandro spun toward the exit, but armed security, Moretti's men in waiter uniforms, materialized, blocking every door. Moretti approached, smiling pleasantly for the crowd while his words dripped venom. "Did you really think I'd let you keep them? Your Elena, your son? They're why you're weak. Alessandro love makes men predictable. If you've hurt them, they're alive, for now." Moretti's smile widened. I have a dozen men at your safe house. Vincent and his team are dead. Your family has a choice to make. Surrender and live, or fight and die. What would you have them do? Alessandro's vision went red. He lunged, but Dominic and Salvatore held him back as security closed in. Starting a massacre here would mean Elena and Ethan's deaths. Moretti leaned close. You took my family 20 years ago. Tonight, I take yours. We'll call it even. Another text, this one with a video attachment. Alessandro's hands shook as he opened it. The safe house living room. Elena backed into a corner, Ethan behind her, 6 armed men surrounding them. And there, standing in the center like a grotesque conductor, was someone Alessandro recognized. Detective Raymond Kane. The cop who'd taken Elena. Kane's voice came through the phone's speaker. Don Silvano, your lady is quite brave, but the boy is terrified. Surrender yourself to the federal agents outside this building in 10 minutes, or I start with him. The video ended. 10 minutes to sacrifice himself or watch his son die. If your heart is racing right now, comment below. This is the moment everything changes. Don't miss what happens next. Alessandro's mind raced through options, finding none. Every team was engaged or dead. Every resource committed. He'd been outplayed completely. Moretti patted his shoulder mockingly. I'll give you privacy for your goodbyes. 9 minutes now. As Moretti walked away, Alessandro's phone rang. An unfamiliar number. He answered. What? Dad? Ethan's voice, small and terrified. They're going to hurt Mom. I know, son. I know. I'm going to... No. Ethan's voice strengthened. Mom has a plan. She told me to tell you. Remember the letters. She said you'd understand. The call ended. Remember the letters? Then it hit him. The letters Elena had written. Letters addressed to him. 9 years of documentation. But also letters to her guardian angel. Salvatore. Alessandro grabbed the older man's arm. The letters Elena wrote, you kept them? Salvatore nodded. Everyone, in a safety deposit box. Why? Because she wasn't just writing to you. She was creating insurance, evidence, documentation of everything she witnessed, everything she knew. Alessandro's mind raced. She knew someday someone might come for her. She prepared. His phone buzzed again. Elena's voice whispered urgently. Alessandro, I gave Ethan something. 3 weeks ago, before they took me, a USB drive hidden in his jacket lining. It has everything. Moretti's operations, his connections, evidence of federal corruption. Christopher can release it to every news outlet in the city. Understanding crashed over him. Elena hadn't just survived. She'd been collecting intelligence. There's more, she whispered. Kane isn't working for Moretti. He's DEA, deep cover. This whole thing, Moretti thinks it's his revenge, but Kane's been building a case for 3 years. He needs Moretti in the open, making moves. Another voice, gruff. Don Silvano, this is Kane. Your lady's right. We've been waiting for Moretti to surface, but we need him alive, and we need evidence. The USB drive has both. Alessandro's world inverted. You're telling me this whole kidnapping was necessary to draw him out? I'm sorry. But Elena's tougher than you know. She volunteered. Volunteered? Alessandro's roar turned heads across the ballroom. To protect Ethan, to protect you, to end this war. Kane's voice hardened. But Moretti just went off script. His men are supposed to be fake, but some are real. We've got a situation. I need you to trust me. Trust you? You took my family. And I kept them alive. Kane paused. 5 minutes, Don Silvano. Moretti needs to think he's won. Let him gloat. Let him confess. I'm recording everything. Then we end this. Legally, permanently. Or you can storm in here, guns blazing, and everyone dies. Your choice. Alessandro looked at Dominic and Salvatore. At Moretti across the room, confident in his victory. At the exits blocked by armed men. He thought of Ethan's courage. Elena's sacrifice. 9 years of letters, of planning, of protecting him even when it cost her everything. "What do you need me to do?" he asked quietly. "Surrender, publicly. Let the feds arrest you. Give Moretti his moment of triumph. In 20 minutes, it'll all be over. I promise." The line went dead. Alessandro looked at his reflection in a gilded mirror. This man who'd built an empire on violence, who'd never trusted anyone, who'd spent 30 years being invincible. Tonight, he had to be vulnerable. Tonight, he had to have faith. "Dominic," he said quietly, "tell the teams to stand down. Tell them to let the raids happen." "Boss?" "That's an order." Alessandro straightened his jacket, walked toward the federal agents entering the ballroom. "Sometimes the only way to win is to surrender." As the handcuffs closed around his wrists, as Moretti laughed triumphantly across the room, Alessandro Silvano did something he hadn't done in 30 years. He prayed. For Elena. For Ethan. For Kane to keep his word. And for the strength to survive what came next. The federal holding cell smelled like desperation and industrial cleaner. Alessandro sat on the metal bench, handcuffed, stripped of his phone and weapon, watching the clock on the wall tick toward either salvation or catastrophe. 19 minutes had passed since Kane's promise. 1 minute remained. The door opened. But it wasn't Kane. Michael Vance limped in, his face still bruised from their encounter, a savage grin splitting his features. "Surprise, Alessandro. Thought you'd killed me? I'm harder to kill than that." Alessandro's blood ran cold. "What are you doing here?" "Finishing what Moretti started." Vance pulled out a phone, showed him a live video feed. The safe house. Elena and Ethan still surrounded. "Kane was DEA, was, past tense. He's dead. My people killed him 2 minutes ago, which means there's no recording, no evidence, and no rescue coming." The world tilted. "Moretti paid me to disappear after you found Elena. Said his plan was complete." Vance's smile widened. "But I still had the detectives on payroll, still had access to the safe house location, and I really, really hate you." Alessandro lunged, but the handcuffs and the 3 guards who materialized behind Vance stopped him cold. "Your family dies tonight," Vance said simply, "and you get to listen." He turned up the phone's volume. Elena's voice, defiant. "You won't get away with this." A gunshot, Ethan's scream. Alessandro's world exploded into pure rage. He threw himself at Vance with such violence that 2 guards went down with him. His hands, still cuffed, found Vance's throat squeezed, felt cartilage compress. More guards poured in, batons rising and falling. Pain bloomed across Alessandro's back, his ribs. He didn't care, kept squeezing, kept killing Vance because if his family was dead, nothing else mattered. "Stop!" The voice cut through the chaos like a blade. Elena stood in the doorway, holding Ethan's hand. Both alive, both unharmed. Behind them stood Kane, very much not dead, with a dozen federal agents. Alessandro's hands went slack. Vance collapsed, gasping. The Don stared at his family, unable to process what he was seeing. "Blanks," Elena said quietly, stepping into the cell. "The gunshot was a blank. We needed Vance to incriminate himself one last time. Kane suspected he'd try something." Kane held up a recording device. "Got everything. Conspiracy to commit murder, obstruction of justice, attempted murder of a federal agent. Vance just buried himself." Alessandro couldn't speak, could only stare as Elena knelt beside him, her hands gentle on his bloodied face. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I know what we put you through. But it was the only way to get everyone. Moretti, Vance, the corrupt cops, all of them, in one net." "You volunteered for this?" His voice broke. "You let them take you, torture you, to end it, to make sure Ethan grew up safe, to give us a chance at a real life." Tears streamed down her face. "I've been working with Kane for 6 months, ever since Moretti's people found us the first time. Kane offered me a deal, help him build a case against Moretti, And you'd get immunity, full immunity, Alessandro, for everything. The words didn't make sense. That's not... The feds don't just give immunity to... They do when you have 9 years of documented evidence of government corruption. Kane unlocked Alessandro's handcuffs. Elena's letters weren't just insurance. They were a roadmap to every dirty cop, every bought judge, every federal agent on organized crime payrolls. She gave us the biggest corruption case in New York history. In exchange, you walk free. Alessandro looked at Elena. This woman who'd been 10 steps ahead of everyone, who'd sacrificed herself not once, but repeatedly to protect their family. You played me, all of us. I protected you. Her voice strengthened. For 9 years, I kept our son safe and documented everything I witnessed about the criminal world. When Moretti found us, I had 2 choices: run forever or end it. I chose to end it. Ethan pulled free from his mother, throwing himself into Alessandro's arms. I knew, Dad. Mom told me the plan. I was supposed to find you, make you emotional, make you act like a father instead of a Don, make you vulnerable so Moretti would make mistakes. Alessandro held his son, this brave boy who'd pointed a gun at him in an office 3 days ago. It felt like a lifetime. You used our son as bait. I used him as hope. Elena's hand rested on both of them. Everything Moretti knew about human nature was right. Love does make us predictable, but it also makes us strong. You came for me because you loved me. And that love is what's saving us all. Kane gestured to the door. Moretti's being arrested as we speak. His confession at the gala, combined with Elena's evidence and Vance's stupidity just now, means everyone goes down the Moretti family. The corrupt feds. Everyone. He paused. Including most of your organization, Don Silvano. Alessandro's jaw tightened. My immunity doesn't extend to them? No, they made their choices, but you... Kane's expression softened fractionally. You get to make a different choice. Walk away. Truly walk away. Be a father. Be a husband if Elena will have you. Build a legitimate life. Alessandro looked at the ruins of his empire. 30 years of blood and power crumbling in a single night. Looked at his soldiers, his legacy, everything he'd built. Then looked at Elena and Ethan. His family? His life. Okay, he whispered. I'm done. Elena collapsed against him, sobbing with relief. Ethan squeezed tighter. And Alessandro Silvano, former Don, former killer, former king of New York's underworld, held them both and felt something he'd never experienced before. Peace. But in the corridor, a figure watched from the shadows. Someone Kane hadn't accounted for. Someone who'd been waiting for exactly this moment. Salvatore McLean stepped forward, gun rising, aimed at Kane's head. I'm sorry, boss, but I can't let you walk away. Not like this. The peaceful moment shattered. Time froze. Salvatore McLean, the man who'd protected Elena for 9 years, who'd been Alessandro's most loyal soldier, who'd wept with gratitude just days ago, stood with a gun pointed at Kane's head. Salvatore. Alessandro's voice carried warning and confusion. What are you doing? What I should have done from the start. Salvatore's weathered face twisted with anguish. Protecting the family. The real family. Not this... surrender. Kane's hand moved toward his weapon, but Salvatore's aim never wavered. Don't. I've got 6 men in this building. Good men who believe in what we built. We're not letting 30 years die because of some deal. Elena pulled Ethan behind her, shielding him with her body. Salvatore, please. This is over. It's not over until I say it's over. Salvatore's voice cracked. You think immunity means anything? They'll come for us anyway. They always do. And, boss, you taught me that family protects family. So I'm protecting you, even if you won't protect yourself. Alessandro stepped forward slowly, hands visible, non-threatening. By killing a federal agent? By making us fugitives? That's not protection, old friend. That's suicide. Maybe. Salvatore's gun trembled. But at least we go down fighting, like we always have. Not on our knees, Begging for mercy will never get. I'm not begging. Alessandro's voice softened. I'm choosing. Choosing them over everything else. Can't you understand that? I understand you're choosing wrong. Tears streamed down Salvatore's face. My daughter, the one Elena saved, she looks up to you. She thinks you're strong, powerful. What do I tell her when she sees you broken? When she learns that love made you weak? You tell her, Elena said quietly, stepping forward despite Alessandro's attempt to stop her, that love made him human, that the strongest thing he ever did was walk away from violence for his son. Salvatore's aim shifted to her. You. This is your fault. You seduced him, made him soft, turned him into a father. Ethan's voice, small but fierce, cut through the tension. The boy stepped out from behind his mother, facing Salvatore with a courage that defied his 9 years. He's my dad, and I'm proud of him for choosing us. The gun wavered. Kid, you don't understand? I understand he killed people. I understand he hurt people. Mom told me everything. Ethan's voice strengthened. But she also told me that people can change. That being strong means knowing when to stop fighting. Salvatore's face crumbled. He's the Don. He can't just stop. Yes, Alessandro said firmly, moving to stand beside his son, one hand on Ethan's shoulder. I can, and I am. Salvatore, you've been loyal to me for 15 years, I'm asking you. As your friend, not your boss, let me have this. Let me have a life with them. The standoff stretched. Federal agents in the corridor tensed, weapons drawn but unable to shoot without hitting civilians. Kane remained motionless, calculating odds, trajectories, consequences. Then Salvatore's daughter appeared in the doorway. Maria McLean, 23 years old, the girl Elena had saved. She'd been waiting in the building, Salvatore's backup plan. Papa! Her voice broke the spell. Papa, please, put the gun down! Salvatore turned, shock written across his features. Maria! What are you? I heard everything. She stepped into the cell, fearless. And Mr. Silvano is right. You taught me that family protects family. Well, I'm protecting you from yourself. She moved between her father and Kane. You shoot him, they kill you. Then I lose my father. Is that what you want? I want... Salvatore's voice broke. I want things to be like they were, before all this. They can't be, Maria said gently. But they can be better. You can walk away too, Papa. We have money saved. We can go somewhere new, start over. You don't have to go down with the ship. Alessandro watched understanding dawn on Salvatore's face, the realization that loyalty didn't require sacrifice, that love meant letting go. The gun lowered. Salvatore's knees buckled. Maria caught him, father and daughter sinking to the floor together as decades of violence finally caught up with him. I'm so tired, he whispered. I know, Papa. I know. Kane moved forward carefully, taking the weapon. Salvatore McLean, for your cooperation in this investigation and your years of protecting Elena Ripley, I'm authorized to offer you the same deal testimony in exchange for immunity and witness protection. Salvatore looked up, disbelief warring with hope. Why? Because, Kane said, glancing at Elena, someone convinced me that redemption is possible, even for people like us. If this moment hit you in the feels, comment below and subscribe because the conclusion is going to be beautiful. Alessandro knelt beside Salvatore, clasping his friend's shoulder. Thank you for everything, for protecting them when I couldn't, for being willing to die for me, but mostly for choosing to live instead. Salvatore managed a weak smile. Boss, Alessandro, the Don corrected gently. Just Alessandro now. Within 20 minutes, the building was secured. Moretti's remaining loyalists were arrested. Vance was hospitalized under guard, facing life in prison. The corrupt network that had strangled New York for decades was dismantled, piece by piece, and in a quiet room, away from the chaos, Alessandro Silvano held his family. What happens now? Ethan asked, his head resting on his father's chest. Alessandro looked at Elena, this extraordinary woman who'd orchestrated their salvation. We disappear. New names, new city. Kane's got a place in Montana lined up. Witness protection until the trials are over. Then maybe Colorado. Somewhere Ethan can see mountains and have a normal childhood. Normal? Elena smiled through tears. We've never been normal. Then we learn. He kissed her forehead, feeling the weight of 30 years of violence finally lifting. We learn to be a family, to be happy. Ethan yawned. Can I have a dog? Both parents laughed, real laughter, free and unguarded. Yes, Alessandro said. You can have a dog. And a treehouse? And a treehouse. And will you teach me Italian? Mom said your family came from Sicily. Alessandro's throat tightened. I'll teach you everything good I know. None of the bad. As Ethan dozed between them, Elena whispered, I love you. I never stopped. I know. He held her tighter. And I promise, no more secrets, no more violence, just us, just this. Outside, dawn broke over New York City. The empire was gone. The legend was ending. But the man, the father, the husband, the human being beneath the monster was finally free. 18 months later, the mountains of Colorado looked different in autumn. Alessandro, now Alex Mitchell on all official documents, stood on the porch of their cabin, watching Ethan chase their golden retriever, Zeus, through fallen leaves that blazed gold and crimson. The boy's laughter echoed across the valley, pure and unshadowed by the trauma that had marked his first 9 years. Coffee's ready. He turned to find Elena in the doorway, 2 mugs in hand, her hair longer now, streaked with sunlight instead of fear. She wore jeans and a flannel shirt, looking nothing like the terrified woman he'd rescued from that warehouse. She looked happy. Thank you. He took the mug, pulled her close with his free arm. For all of this, for giving us a chance at normal. Normal is overrated, she said, smiling against his chest. But peaceful? Peaceful is everything. They'd bought the cabin with money from the sale of his legitimate businesses, the only assets the government had allowed him to keep. 20 acres of forest and streams, far from cities and violence. Ethan attended the local school, made friends, joined the soccer team. Elena worked part-time at a medical clinic, using her nursing skills to help people instead of hiding from them. And Alessandro. Alex had discovered he was good at carpentry. His hands, which had dealt death for 30 years, now built furniture cabinets, toys for Ethan's room. Dad! Ethan ran up the porch steps, Zeus bounding after him. Can we go fishing this afternoon? Tommy said the trout are biting near Miller's Creek. Sure, buddy. Alessandro ruffled his son's hair, longer now, wild and free. But homework first. Ethan groaned dramatically but couldn't hide his grin. Mom already made me do math. Then history. But Dad... History. Then fishing. Deal? Deal. The boy hugged him quickly, then disappeared into the cabin with Zeus trailing behind. Elena watched them go, her expression soft. He's thriving. I've never seen him this happy. Neither have I. Alessandro's voice caught. I missed so much. 9 years of his life, gone. Hey. She turned him to face her, hands cupping his face. You can't change the past, but you're here for his future. That's what matters. A car approached on the long driveway, a rental sedan. Alessandro's instincts flared, his hand moving toward where a weapon would have been. But there was no weapon. Not anymore. The car stopped. Kane stepped out, looking uncomfortable in civilian clothes. Alex, he called, using the new name. Got a minute? They walked away from the cabin, toward the tree line where Ethan couldn't hear. Elena stayed on the porch, trusting but vigilant. "The trials are over," Kane said without preamble. "Moretti got life without parole. Vance, too. The corruption investigation led to 47 arrests, including 3 federal judges and a senator. It's the biggest organized crime prosecution in 20 years." Alessandro absorbed this. "And my people? The ones who went down?" "Most took deals, shorter sentences in exchange for testimony." Kane's expression softened. "Salvatore and Maria are in Oregon. He's working at a hardware store. She's studying to be a teacher. They're okay." Relief flooded through him. "That's good. That's really good." "There's more." Kane pulled out an envelope. "This is your official discharge from witness protection. The program's over. You're free to go anywhere. Do anything. No more check-ins. No more supervision." Alessandro stared at the envelope like it might explode. "Why? I thought we had another year." "You did, but..." Kane smiled slightly. "You've been a model citizen. No contact with former associates. Clean record. Ethan's doing well in school. Elena's integrated into the community. You've done everything right." He paused. "Also, I talked to my superiors. Told them you'd paid your debt, that keeping you in the program was just bureaucracy at this point." "You vouched for me?" "Elena did more than vouch for the country. She brought down an empire." Kane extended his hand. "You've earned this fresh start. Don't waste it." Alessandro shook his hand, surprised by the emotion in his throat. "Thank you. For everything. For believing we could change." "Don't thank me. Thank your family." Kane glanced at the cabin, where Ethan had emerged again, tossing a ball for Zeus. "That kid saved your life, you know? The moment he walked into your office, everything changed." "I know," Alessandro smiled. "He's the bravest person I've ever met." Kane drove away, leaving Alessandro with the envelope, his freedom, officially documented. He walked back to the cabin where Elena waited. "Good news?" she asked. "The best." He showed her the papers. "We're done. Really done. No more protection, no more restrictions. We can stay here or move. Whatever we want." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "What do you want?" Alessandro looked at their cabin, at Ethan playing with his dog, at the mountains rising in the distance. Thought about the empire he'd built, the power he'd wielded, the fear he'd commanded. None of it compared to this. "I want this," he said simply. "Forever. You, Ethan, this life. It's more than I deserve, but it's everything I need." She kissed him, soft and sure. "Then let's keep it." That evening, they had dinner on the porch. Spaghetti that Ethan had helped make, garlic bread that Alessandro had burned slightly, salad from Elena's garden. Zeus begged shamelessly under the table. They laughed at Ethan's jokes, planned next week's camping trip, talked about ordinary things in ordinary ways. After Ethan went to bed, Alessandro and Elena sat on the porch swing, wrapped in blankets against the autumn chill, watching stars emerge over the mountains. "Do you miss it?" Elena asked quietly. "The power? The empire?" He considered this honestly. "Sometimes. The respect, the control. But then I think about what it cost, the people I hurt, the man I became." He pulled her closer. "This is better. Harder sometimes, but better." "No regrets?" "Only one." He kissed her temple. "That I didn't meet you sooner. That I wasted so many years being something I hated." "You're not that man anymore." "No," he agreed. "I'm someone better. Because of you. Because of him." Inside, through the window, they could see Ethan's nightlight, a small glow in the darkness. Their son, safe and happy and loved. Alessandro Silvano, the Don, the killer, the king, was dead. Alex Mitchell, the father, the husband, the carpenter, was alive. And for the first time in 30 years, he was at peace. The mountains stood eternal around them. The stars blazed overhead. And in the small cabin that smelled of pine and home cooking, A family built from ruins and redemption slept soundly. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't conquering an empire, it's finding the courage to walk away from one, and discovering that love, in the end, is the only power that truly matters. Which part was your favorite? Drop a comment and let me know. And if you loved this story, subscribe for more emotional, thrilling tales that'll keep you on the edge of your seat. Thank you so much for reading, and I'll see you in the next story. Remember, love always wins.